Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning for our EDC coffee chat, Coffee with Colleen. We are really excited and happy to have Ted Marra on with us today. He is the project manager for building the West End Forest Industries mill on the west end of Clallam County. The first location is in Beaver, Washington, and then a second location will be at the City of Forks Industrial Park. So Ted is actually with Saw Machine Integrators, LLC, and has been hired by the owner of the mill, Sustainable Green Team. They are a publicly traded company that has started up the mill, West End Forest Industries, which they lovingly refer to as WEFI. And the EDC has been very involved with their entry into our county and trying to help them understand and meet all the important players in our community. So Ted has a really long background in the milling industry, and I'll let him share that background with you. But first, just a few housekeeping details. If you would put yourself on mute so we don't inadvertently pick up any background noise, that would really be great. And if you would raise your hand, and if you have a question, and we'll call on you, or if you prefer to put your question into the chat, I can read that and he can answer it that way. So with that, oh, and I did get a text from the CEO of Sustainable Green Team, Tony Raynor. He was not able to join us today. His flight was delayed, so he's actually in the air right now. He did come to the EDC annual gala this last year, and they are a member of the Clallam County EDC. So Ted, go ahead and take it.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Yeah, my name's...
Well, got them on mute. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, my name's Ted Marra, and I have a company, Saw Machine Integrators, and we work on developing mill sites. I reside in Virginia, but I will be calling Forks, Washington home for the next several years. I first came here in November of last year to look at the project, and got really excited about the owner's ideas of putting that mill back to work. When that mill was shut down back in 2015, it's kind of a shame in that there's a massive infrastructure on that site in those buildings that is in very good condition and would represent tens of millions of dollars to recreate today. So I came on board and helped him develop some analysis of the property over the New Year's holidays. And then I guess he closed late March on the property. And since that time, we have been working with various engineering and consulting firms to address bringing the site up to 2022 standards. That has been a little bit of a challenge, but not unexpected. And right now we are sitting in a position where we've applied for all of the permits required to construct and operate the property. We have gotten a couple of those permits, and a couple of them are pending in the near future. Once that permitting process is complete, then the real work begins. And we're going to be using some of the existing machinery in the buildings. There's a optimized edger and a sorter machine that represents very expensive pieces of iron that we do not have to purchase. We just have to get them back and running. And then we have gone around the country and searched for used machines that are in good shape that can be utilized in the sawmill. Most of that equipment is in good enough shape that we could put it into service right now. However, that's not what we're going to do. We're going to take each piece, work with the original equipment manufacturer, and rebuild it to new OEM standards, which for me is a really great process. I love rebuilding equipment to better than new standards.
Your daddy?
Oh,
So, yeah, and I don't know how much everybody here knows about sawmills, but this sawmill will be quite a significant producer. Over 100 million feet of finished product per year, primarily coastal hem fir, but a little bit of Doug fir, if we can get it. Producing mostly dimension, but some small timbers, 4x4s and 6x6s to the heading off to the wood treaters in other parts of the country. The process that we're going to be using is very similar to what was in the old mill. The old mill was producing, I think, 105 million feet a year at its peak. And that process is a reducing quad bandsaw into an optimized edger. There will also be an optimized gang and completely state-of-the-art scanning and trimming. We are investing heavily in new controls and electronics throughout the mill. The mill will have one central brain that will look at all of the various machining centers, what they're doing, whether they need to speed up, whether they need to slow down, and so forth. We have partnered with a really fantastic company, USNR. They're in Woodland, Washington. They are essentially North America's premier sawmill manufacturer. And I will be leaning on them for electrical, mechanical support, as well as spare parts for our machines. Most of the machines that we have in the facility were manufactured under one of their brands that they've acquired over the last 50 years. That would be a cool website for everyone to go check out. USNR's website. Absolutely cutting edge, state-of-the-art stuff. The CEO, Tony Rayner, and I just went to Jacksonville, Florida, and we're starting the negotiations for a ultra modern dry kiln for the facility. It will be a continuous uniflow system, which is really state-of-the-art in today's standards. And it will be fired by green sawdust that we make on site. It's pretty exciting that this technology that they've developed requires about 50% less input energy to dry the same amount of lumber, because of the unique process they're using. And I don't have a really well prepared talk. Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about our permits. Permitting has been, it's been a challenge. It's cumbersome. It's slow. But one of the issues with that site is it's a 41-acre site, and there's been an operating sawmill on there for about 50 years. And if we go back in the archives, we see that it was actually something to do with harvesting spruce back in the 30s for the aircraft industry, and it was actually owned by the U.S. Army, and there was a hospital there. And that being said, the site is very well used. There's a lot of old infrastructure there that we've had to investigate what it is. And we've done that. And one of the things that has been a challenge is the proximity to Lake Pleasant. It's really close. And we are very sensitive to that we cannot allow any pollutants, contaminants, organics into Lake Pleasant or the waterways. So I've been working with some civil engineers and some biologists to come up with a strategy to deal with stormwater that has traditionally flowed directly into the lake. We're going to take all of that stormwater flow and send it to the other side of the property, and infiltrate it back into the ground. And then where we have a emergency overflow for 100-year or 500-year flood, God forbid we have a 500-year flood, that water would be filtered and polished prior to discharging over a emergency overflow. But 99.9% of our stormwater will be put back into the ground after filtration has taken place.
And Ted, you guys met with the Quileute Natural Resources team and some of their council members, right?
Yes.
You want to share a little bit about that? The
Yeah,
work you've done with them?
Yeah, so the Quileute tribe expressed some concerns, rightfully so, about what we're doing with our stormwater. And we made a application for a stormwater general permit. And that's a requirement for any construction site in America to have that permit. And in that permit, I think there was a little bit of confusion in that, until we get a construction permit, we can't move any dirt, so we can't divert water away from Lake Pleasant. So we have to apply for this permit with the existing grades. And I think there was a little bit of confusion that some people thought that we were going to be permanently discharging to Lake Pleasant, but that's not the case. We're in the design and engineering process for this very significant system of infiltration and filtration. So we met with the tribe. We discussed in detail our plans for what we're going to do. They're not cast in stone yet because, quite frankly, until I got my general construction permit, I can't even dig large test pits, which are required to analyze how much water the ground can take. We have to clear trees. We have to dig very large, deep holes to do that. And we were not willing to do that without a permit. So that process took a lot of time, and it basically burned up this entire season's construct dry weather construction season, but we have our general permit. We're in the process of clearing the brush and saplings that grew up over the last 8 years on the site. We really would like to see some wet weather before we do our test pits. You know, right now we can dig a test pit 15 foot deep and it's bone dry, but we all know that's not reality. We really need to dig these test pits in December or January when the ground is fully saturated and we can really see where the groundwater is, what the absorption rates will be in real world conditions. So that's what we'll do. And then with that data, we'll zero in on a final design for our stormwater facilities.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and share screen with and pull up the PowerPoint for you, and you can kind of talk through some of these if you want. Let's see. All right, from beginning, there we go. And then also, of course, Sustainable Green Team has a ton of great videos, and I've queued up a couple of those if you want to share, pick some of those, Ted, about the West End Forest Industries mill.
Yeah, you know, Colleen, I'm not familiar with some of these videos. I don't know that I'd be able to talk intelligently on the fly.
Well, one you're talking on, so.
Well, I would probably know that one.
Yeah. So anyway, these were some of the things I thought you might want to share.
Sure. Well, yeah, in terms of timeline, timeline's kind of difficult. The project permitting has kind of changed our timelines. And because of those delays, we've drilled into some more technologies and engineering details that we feel we really don't want to pass up or miss the opportunity to implement them. So we're probably looking at a 2024 startup for some of the equipment. Some of the equipment will be started up next summer on a limited basis. The shipping and merchandising will be up and running. That's not very complicated. But the primary breakdown, we are looking at some pretty interesting technologies to better reclaim recovery of each cubic foot of material going into the mill. So timelines is a little bit of a moving target, but fully operational late in 2024 is what we're thinking at this time. We do have another site, and that's the Forks Industrial site, which has about a 90,000 square foot building in it. That location, we are looking at a log yard and some chip production, as well as down the road a ways, doing some sort of engineered wood products, whether it be glue laminated beam or cross laminated timber or both. Certainly we will be producing glue laminated beam out of that site. Whether we do CLT or not is still a little bit up in the air. But that is really a second stage to our beaver facility. You know, you got to make lumber before you can make glue lam beams. So so that's kind of what's going on there.
Let's see. I'll go to.
I want to talk a little bit about our landscape berm. Our site is that's the Forks site.
Yeah.
That's the beaver site. So if you look at that building with a big white garage door right there in the center of the screen. And behind that, you can see those little concrete blocks across the asphalt. Yeah, we will be constructing a landscape berm across that entire area to separate Lake Pleasant from the industrial site.
Here.
We're required to build about a 6-foot high earthen berm and plant it with native species. And quite frankly, we don't really feel that's adequate. So what we're building is we've purchased some very large concrete echo blocks, and we're building up a retention wall so that we can get that berm higher. And then on top of those concrete blocks, we're going to be building an 8-foot tall sound fence that will pretty much block nearly all noise and a significant portion of the light from the facility from Lake Pleasant. There were some concerns about the light pollution out onto Lake Pleasant, which I completely get. I mean, who wants to see a bunch of industrial lights on a beautiful lake like that? So we kind of are reworking the plant flow so that there's no activity on that side of the building. So we don't need any lights at all, other than egress lights around the egress doors. But all the big lights, big floodlights on that side of the mill have been removed. So I'm pretty confident that the neighbors will notice a significant difference from when it was operating 8-9 years ago to when we're operating now.
And this, I think, to emphasize, this was owned by Interfor, and then they sold it. Wasn't it 2015? I think we've got a lot of people that on the call that know a lot about this. Like I saw Rod Fleck, the mayor of Forks, Tim Fletcher. I see Grant Monroe on. He used to be a mill manager of Rainier, and then also we have who else is on the call here? Mona Griswold from DNR. And so if any of you guys have information to share, please feel free to pipe in about the history of this particular site. And Interfor had put a 5-year, or was it a 10-year? I think a 10-year moratorium on it operating as a mill when they sold it, but they removed that for the Sustainable Green Team, which was great. Yeah, and they have been leasing the other site, which I'll go back, this site, which is owned by the city of Forks. This is all part of their industrial park. And again, Rod and Tim are on the call, and they're the folks that manage this. I should let them speak to it. But, and so Rod or Tim, do you want to share a little bit about this site and the history there? Or not?
Yeah, so Fortac did have a lease on it, and they did let that lease. They let the Sustainable Green take over the lease, and it was locked up until that point in time, and no other business could go in there, no other lumber business could go in there. So their lease was fast approaching to be renegotiated, and then Sustainable Green Team came along, and now they have taken over the site. I'm very thankful for that and the jobs that will be produced there.
Rod, do you have anything to share?
Well, I can add, Colleen, that the property was developed in the early 1990s and completed and dedicated in 1994. The state and federal economic development agencies all participated significantly in the development of the property for back then it was called Portac, and Portac was purchased by Interfor. So Portac is associated with Port of Tacoma. It was a company that did timber there, is owned by a Japanese company headquartered in Japan, and it made stud grade lumber and sold that product all over the West. They closed in late 2014, early 2015, and then maintained the lease under a provision that extended the lease out. And Sustainable Green Team, the council agreed to an assignment by Interfor to SGTM, and that was all completed this summer. And SGTM has been paying for the lease of the property starting in August of this year.
Gotcha. And so there was a question about, will the dry kiln be located in Beaver or at the Fork site? Ted?
Yeah, the dry kiln will be at Beaver.
Okay, great. Okay, so that's a picture here. This is another picture of the Beaver site where you can see more of the lake. And they've been, as Ted shared, really, they're taking it very seriously, that they want to be good neighbors and ensure that the stormwater remains on site, and are investing a lot of money to change the stormwater system to ensure that, whereas previously when Interfor operated this site, owned it, operated it, that wasn't the case, right? They used the lake as outflow for the stormwater.
Correct. They did. They had some very crude oil separators that we are abandoning, and in one case we'll be removing. If you look, that small square white building right there, yeah, that is the old fire suppression house that held the fire pumps for the sprinkler system. And that somehow got subdivided off of this industrial site and is now located on a residential property operating as a RV park and Airbnb.
This area, yeah.
Yeah. So that was a little bit complex situation, and there was some hand wringing about, what to do, how to do it. And lo and behold, I got in touch with the fire marshal from Clallam County, and he really didn't want to see us drawing fire water off of the lake anymore. And so we investigated installing a very large above ground tank and relocating the pump systems. And ultimately, that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be installing a 100,000 gallon water tank. And we removed all of the pumps and systems out of that little building, and are sending them out to be factory overhauled, to be put in the new facility that we're going to be building. And I'm really glad we're doing all of that, because when we pulled out that fire suppression equipment from that building down, there's about a 20-foot hole in that building that's actually below the level of Lake Pleasant. That was a completely antiquated system. I'm very happy we're away from that. We're now going to be on a tank of filtered water, nice and clean. So if we ever do have a fire emergency, we're not worrying about, did a beaver build a dam over our inlet pipe, which historically, I guess, was a serious problem. So, we're really updating the fire system with brand new equipment or remanufactured equipment. So that's,
I think I want to go to the video that you have right now. There are more photos and stuff in that, but I think it would be helpful probably to share this video. I think it's the right one. Yep, it is. Here we go.
Is there sound, Colleen?
Okay. Okay, so you guys can't hear the sound from the
No.
video? Okay. All right, well, I don't know how to fix that. So,
Colleen, when you share
Yeah.
screen, there should be a button on the bottom to share sound as well.
really? Okay, let me do a stop share. Thanks, Lindsay. So share screen and advanced sharing options. And nope, that's not it. Sorry, guys, about this. Let's see. Where is that? How about Lindsay? How about if I make you a co-host and then you could do it?
Shoot, I'm just on my phone, and
Oh,
so
darn.
I'm not well positioned for that. It's an additional feature when you share screen to click a button that says share sound, and I don't do it enough.
Oh,
to
I
know
see it.
where it is.
Thank you for educating me on this. I appreciate that. All right, so I got it. There we go. And share, and I'm gonna go back then to here and push play. Is it working now?
I think the selection to come out here to Beaver, Washington it's pretty smart. You know, we had 2 large sawmills shut down about 8 years ago. And in that 8 years, the volume of timber growth that happened in this region was phenomenal. What that means is the sawmills shut down. There was no one to consume those logs, so those logs, they just grew. There's a staggering amount of logs available in the marketplace here on the Olympic Peninsula. And some of the logs are actually too big for the local existing sawmills. We've identified that it's a little bit larger log that we need to focus on, and we're tooling for that larger log. And it's pretty exciting because some of those larger logs, they're actually being cut and just left in the woods because there's no one to process them. It's a great opportunity for the Sustainable Green Team to capitalize on a resource that oftentimes is just going to be left to rot. On the Olympic Peninsula, they're basically running about a 40-year rotation from harvest to harvest. And in that 40-year rotation, if you look at a coastal hemlock, that tree could be 30 inches diameter at the butt. You know, it's growing profusely. Nowadays, the trend is sawmills are sawing smaller and smaller logs, and they're not capable of cutting these larger logs. But here on the peninsula, it's pretty unique in the world. I've traveled the world looking at timber. You can produce a lot of fiber in 40 years here on the peninsula, and it's a component of nutrients, sunlight, and moisture. And we've got plenty of nutrients. Obviously, this is the only temperate rainforest in North America. We have tons of water. So really the limiting factor is sunlight. As a result of those 3 components, the peninsula can really grow a lot of wood. There's more standing softwood timber now than there was 100 years ago. 100 years ago, when we clear cut timber, we didn't replant. Now, by law, Oregon and Washington and some other states, the loggers have to post a bond. They have to replant the trees. The reality of big old forests producing oxygen and cleaning the air, it's interesting. The older the tree, the less oxygen it's producing and the less CO2 it's sequestering. It's the young, vibrant trees that are performing that function exponentially more than the bigger, older trees. So this idea of farming timber is good all the way around.
All right. Okay. Yeah, you're famous, Ted. Sustainable Green Team has a lot of different videos. They have a channel and they really try to live their name. And do you want to share a little bit about that? All the different things they do within their holding company of Sustainable Green Team?
Colleen, I couldn't really speak to that.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
I'm a consultant for them, and I don't really know the inner workings of what they're doing. I mean, I know bits and pieces, but I would feel a little bit out of place speaking
Okay.
about a company that
Gotcha.
I'm just a consultant for.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So I guess they tried to take advantage of every part of the tree, and they have a company that also goes into areas. Some of those pictures, I think, that they showed. Well, they've got a storm recovery company that after a hurricane they go in. They also do a lot of chipping and sell a lot of mulch into Home Depot and Lowe's, and they have contracts with Waste Connections. They're also interested in the biochar industry to produce energy in that space. So they're trying to take advantage of every element of a tree to make the most of it, I guess, is the bottom line there. And they now are working with a company that is trying to make soils more productive for carbon capture and for just farming and such. So across the board, they've been investing in different technologies that are good for our planet and that try to help make things more efficient, and that so we don't have parts and pieces of a tree rotting and then emitting carbon is, I think, the intention there. So I'm going to go back and share the screen with just some of these pictures from the mills. And there we go. So this is again picture back at Forks that, as you can see, since it's been sitting there for 8 years, it hasn't been maintained. So have you guys, Ted, started working on anything at the Forks Industrial Park site? Or are you guys going to get to that after you're done getting the beaver site up and running?
No, we'll be working on both sites parallel. Obviously, the beaver site has a significant more amount of site and infrastructure work, but the Forks property has been mowed. We're working on getting rid of all the alder that has grown up, and every little nook and cranny you can imagine an alder springs up in the gutters and drainage ditches. So that's currently being worked on, and really Forks is in the design and engineering infancy of design and engineering
Okay.
right now.
Do you have to get any
electrical work.
permits? Do you have to get permits to operate on this site?
Yeah, you
Outside
do.
of obviously building, if you're going to do footings and that kind of thing.
Yeah, of course. You have to, any industrial site anywhere in North America, you need to get stormwater permits, air permits, building permits for anything you do. The idea of building an industrial structure with no permits is a fallacy anywhere in the United States.
Mhm. Yeah. And okay, let's see. Here's some of the pictures of the equipment that you guys sent.
Yeah,
that I
that's
just-
a really exciting piece of equipment that we purchased. That is while it's just a wheel loader with some forks for unloading logs. We have invested in Caterpillar's next generation systems where that machine is actually running a diesel generator and electrical drives are driving the machine. And the exciting part about that is there's up to a 50% reduction in fuel utilizing this technology over standard diesel powertrain. And as you look at that machine, that machine can burn 15,000 gallons of fuel a year. So cutting that in half is huge. And that technology is not cheap, to say the least. There's only 8 of those machines in the world. We're getting number 9. So it's
Wow.
a really, really big deal. We're really excited about it. We've also been working with NC Cat in Fife, where they have a process, and I believe Cecil Robertson is on this call too. Maybe he could talk a little bit about the recycling that we're doing with Caterpillar, where we actually go and we take an old core Caterpillar machine and send it back to a Caterpillar facility, and they make it brand new again with the old frame and weldments that have been inspected and repaired. So it's very high-end industrial recycling. Maybe Cecil could chime in on what he's got going on that project, if he's here.
Good morning, everyone.
Hi, Cecil, go ahead.
So like Ted was talking about, one of the big things that Ted and I worked together on was the being green and renewable as possible. And one thing that we isolated down was the opportunity to take these core machines like he had spoken about and turn these machines back into brand new machines again. So I don't know, we had a couple slides there. The first machine we identified as along with that electric drive is we took a older Cat 988G, and we're going to be completely disassembling that machine right down to the frame, and we're going to be replacing the major components will be staying in place, but in-house we're going to be rebuilding the engine, transmission, entire running gears on those machines, as well as hydraulics, electrical, paint. So it goes a lot in with reusing machines that are previously would have been just thrown to the trash heap or left to rot. And so these machines are good usable cores, and we're trying to reduce and reuse as much as possible. The second machine that we identified that would have been very applicable for the situation and these mills was a Caterpillar 568, which is a log loader on a track frame. Similar thing, that machine is going to be getting completely disassembled, inspected, and we are going to be doing hydraulics, the engine, running gears, undercarriages on that machine as well, bring it back to a brand new status that Caterpillar will recognize as a brand new machine. So really gives us the opportunity to reduce our carbon footprint, reuse as much of that machine as possible, and then also help sustain really with what the Sustainable Green Team and the model and what they like to hold their standards to. So we're able to really put together and produce something that is going to be very beneficial in that aspect.
That's great. That's cool. And that we're doing it here. That's great.
Yeah, that rebuild's happening in Washington.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I'll go back to the PowerPoint again, and sorry if these pictures aren't in a very good order. But I tried to group them into things that looked similar, so you can go ahead and talk briefly about this. I know we've got about 13 minutes left, and a lot of this stuff won't make a lot of sense to most people, but
This is a shop, some old equipment in the mill we're not going to be utilizing.
okay. Let's see. I'll scroll down then. I don't know what that is.
That's the J-bar sorter. We will be reutilizing that after it has been overhauled and new electronics put on it. That's a significant piece of machinery that is definitely going to be reused.
What does a J-bar sorter do?
It sorts the various products that are coming out of the mill. They're all piled together, 2x4, 2x6, different lengths, different qualities, and we'll sort them by length and width to like size packages.
Okay.
That's an OSHA tunnel that will be reused. That's just basically a giant safety fixture.
Okay. Another picture of that.
Yeah. That's the front end of the J-bar sorter. The incline and infeed of that has been removed. We will be rebuilding new systems for feeding that machine.
Okay.
Yeah, this is exciting. So we have so much work to do on these projects. We've brought in our own CNC high definition plasma cutting machines. We can cut parts on gauge metal less than 1/8 of an inch thick, all the way up to 2 inches thick with a very high level of precision. Bolt holes can be cut, contours cut. We are utilizing 3-dimensional solid modeling CAD software, which exports directly to this machine for cutting of parts to a very high level of precision. The machines that we will be making on site will be OEM quality and oftentimes overseen by OEMs. USNR is going to be partnering with us for a lot of the mechanical engineering for machines we will be building on site with men from Forks.
And women.
And women, yes. You're right. Yeah, and we've got, I think right now we have about 8 guys, and I'm really excited about the crew that we've put together. They're very talented welders, and millwrights and fabricators, and we're giving them some really fantastic tools, some powerful tools to build first-class machines and systems right there on site.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's just another view of the system. That is our optimizing edger. That machine is going to get completely overhauled, new scanners installed, new PLC overhaul. PLC, programmable logic controller, computer controls.
Yeah.
As well as a mechanical overhaul. But that machine was originally installed in 1990 by Portac. It's a Nunes machine, which is under the USNR umbrella. So they're working with me on that. Great machine.
Okay. Oh, and I guess that's most all of them that I had lined up there. Yeah. Let's see. Keep on going.
I'm drawing a blank.
Okay. Well, there are a couple more pictures here, so I can.
Well, one of the things I could talk about is some of the technology that we're going to be utilizing is we're going to be in our merchandising systems, we're going to be scanning the logs traversely, meaning looking at down it along its length with LiDAR scanners to make our bucking decisions. The old system just relied on operators' judgment. And there was 3 men operating that whole line. We're going to be doing that with scanners, and there will be only 1 man running that system.
Okay. There are some more pictures here. I'm trying to get them lined up for you. And so how many people do you think you will be hiring when everything is all up and running?
About 50 head per shift.
Okay. And so are you anticipating you'll need some training done with the college or something?
That remains to be seen. I'm not, I'm overseeing the mechanical. I'm not necessarily involved in the staffing other than the guys building the mill. So, and that's 2 years out. So I'm sure they will be developing strategies for how they're going to staff this facility. And that's a challenge. There's not a lot of housing in Forks. A lot of people have moved away, so we're gonna have to attract some people from other areas. We got to figure out where they're gonna live. But hopefully they can get that sorted out.
Okay. I think I've got some other pictures ready to go here. So I can share screen again, and you can kind of talk about what some of this other stuff is. Let's see, I think it starts right about here, and I'll go back to sharing screen here. And slideshow from, can you see this?
That's a 12-inch cover arbor gang. It's an older machine, but it has almost no use on it. We are going to be converting that into a modern machine with a modern optimizer in feed.
Okay. Is that the other side of it?
Other side of it. So that is a shot of our USNR reducing quad. In the background, the red thing in the front is the diesel fire pump. But behind it, those orange wheels are the quad band wheels.
Okay.
There's the subframes for the quad. That's a really special machine. There was only a few of those built, and it's designed for cutting a larger log so that you have chipping canners as your first process. And then between the chipping canners and the 4 bandsaws, there's a set of stabilizing rolls that help to stabilize a large log through the bands. And then there's another set of stabilizing rolls just after the bands. And it's not typically done. I think there's only 3 or 4 that USNR has done. And we found one and we got it. And we'll be working with Premier Band Wheel out of Vancouver, BC. And their master technician, Harry Penn, on rebuilding that to OEM spec. Harry has been working on USNR bandsaws for 52 years. So I'm really excited to be working with that guy. He is a walking bandsaw encyclopedia. Another shot of the quad mill towers.
Okay.
chipping canner reducers. So those are chipping discs that put two small flat faces on the log before it enters the quad band. Another angle of the whole system. Those are the stabilizing roll for in between the chipping reducers and the quad bands.
And I think that's back to where we
Yeah.
were there.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's open it up to questions. We've got a whopping 3 minutes left, and there may be some folks that have questions. Lowell, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, listening to all of the operation there, it sounds pretty high tech. So I'm a little bit curious about what kind of training you're going to supply to your employees in what sounds like a very high tech operation. Thank you.
Well, the idea is we're going to try and bring on, in the later stages of the equipment and technology installation, bring on the people who are going to be running the mill to help install these systems. And we will be relying on USNR's training team for the training in the high-tech disciplines of their systems. So that's what's really great about partnering with such a large, experienced manufacturer. They have some pretty significant resources for helping us train our workforce, and they're really just down the road. They're in Woodland, Washington, so that's, I don't know, maybe a half hour north of Portland. It's really not that far away. They have a training center there where we can send people. And then, of course, we'll be bringing their staff on site for extended training sessions on the technology and operations of the systems.
And Reed has a question. Reed, will you go ahead? And you're from Green Crow, of course.
Yeah, hi, I'm Reed Wendell. I'm Vice President of Green Crow. I'm curious, what log dimensions will you be purchasing? I heard larger logs, but do you have a minimum diameter or max butt range that you're going to be targeting?
Like a 9 to 32. We'd like to be heavy in that 20 to 24 inch log. But we can efficiently run, we could efficiently run probably down to a 7 on the sharp chain system.
Thank you. Yeah,
And
that's exciting.
And I know supply is something you're going to have to be dealing with. How the fiber supply, what are your thoughts in that space?
Well, again, I'm the mechanical technician heading up the project from a infrastructure, but they have several foresters that in their southern operations, and I believe they're ex-Rainier guys. And at some point they will be getting involved with our fiber procurement. But that's not, I'm not really into that side of it.
Yeah, I know they did some evaluation before they purchased the property and everything to understand. Basically, there's kind of diminishing supply from DNR. But Mona, can you speak to that? Like, how many in the wood basket of the Forks area, or Rod? I know you were, pretty much an expert in that space too. What do you foresee going forward? But then there's also private entities like Campbell Global and Green Crow and Rainier that you could buy from, but then also small forest owners as well. And so as I understand, you're looking at all those sources to purchase logs. Rod or Mona? I don't know if Mona is still on.
I was going to give Mona the opportunity first, Coin. So
Okay. I think she's not on anymore, Rod.
So we're pretty fortunate in that our private sector timber managers still offer a significant quantity of fiber every year and have for the last almost 3 decades. I've been in Forks, which includes some pretty lean times in the 90s and through the Great Recession. And so we know that that's a function there. We've also had a 8-0 victory with the Supreme Court, making it pretty clear that the DNR's obligation is to manage timber and trust and to produce a revenue stream within their requirements of ecological and environmental legal requirements as well. And so the department will be going through their next decadal harvest calculation here. They will start that year's end. They've done a little bit of initial scoping, as I recall, on that, and then that will set the standard for the next decade. Mona and her colleagues Drew and Bill have worked really hard to meet their yearly objectives under the current sustained harvest calculation for the junior taxing districts, and are running into some personnel needs that is making them meet their regional objective a bit of a challenge, but they are trying significantly to do so. And I think the vigilance is going to be necessary. Those 50 jobs a shift are vital to the West End. Back in with the 2 mill closures, we lost between 85 and 95% of our manufacturing employment sector out here west of the Elwha, and working to get that back has been a challenge, and successfully met with the SGTM group and others that are working to develop fiber related products here on the West End.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Rod. Well, gosh, I see it's 9:04, so we've gone over. And Ted, do you have any closing comments you want to share?
No, I'm looking forward to executing all of these designs that we've been working on for all these months, and it's going to be a great project. We're really trying to create a best of class facility. There's no corners being cut anywhere, which for me is exciting.
Yeah.
I like to build nice stuff. So great opportunity.
Yeah, so we're really excited to have the West End Forest Industries here, and it is a slow start, but to do it right with permitting and getting a good team on board, that's really necessary, obviously. And we're just really happy to have you in the community, Ted. So thanks so much for joining us, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more over the next months.
Yep, super. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.